Hello, hello. Oh, my Lanta, what a treat do we have for you today. We have Ron Frost with us today, and this is the first podcast on ZenJen Connections in a hot minute, y'all. And he has inspired so much in my orbit. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, and then we're just going to let the conversation flow in the way that it's been flowing for nearly an hour since before we even started recording this session. We have just been in the zone. There is so much that is transpiring from our energetic exchange together, and I can't wait to share it with you. It's so exciting. Ron is a motivational speaker and a business and master life coach, as well as a leadership consultant, and he is an author of the book, Getting Unstuck, The 9 Keys to Creating More Prosperity, Fulfillment, and Joy in Your Life. He's also a licensed spiritual practitioner with the Center for Spiritual Living Cultural Coast and the current VP of Programs for the National Speakers Association of Central Florida, where he resides in his home state. Ron's speeches and workshops focus on the topic of self-empowerment through the power of self-awareness. He presents to corporate clients, government, nonprofit organizations, spiritual centers, churches, fellowships across the globe. He is an avid traveler in all of the ways, you guys. His next book is going to be released in the fall of 2024. That's coming up in a month. And it's titled One Humanity and is based on the embracing of unity consciousness through the understanding of spiritually based metaphysical principles and the embodiment of one's true divine nature. Ron is an active participant and a regular contributor for many chapters of the Centers for Spiritual Living that are speckled throughout his home state of Florida and across the United States. And he reports that he has noticed in his experience an uptick of interest in human design. And ever since he joined my masterclass, Decoding the Cosmos, that we had last spring, where an aligned group of humans came together and connected the many dots linking astrology and human design. Since that time, Ron and I have shared so many emails back and forth about captivating insights, profound experiences, and energetic epiphanies that have served as kismet signs from the universe at large. All of it's been aligning to converge us on our individual life paths into deep work together, beginning right here on this podcast chat today. You're in for a treat, you guys. Welcome, Ron, to ZenJen Connections. It has been such a pleasure to sync orbits with you face to face again. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Jen. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And it's great to be here. It's great to be on your podcast.
You are in New Hampshire right now, right? But you normally reside in Florida. And
Yes.
you were traveling for in multiple different places across the US. And you just told me during our chat before we began recording how you're an avid bike rider and you've been to Wales and to Scotland and all over the place. And I'm so fascinated by everything that you're spearheading in not just your orbit, but in the orbits of others. And just being a motivational speaker and an emotional projector, you are kind of this embodiment of this misconception that I just sent you an email about this, how that projectors, they don't have enough energy to do things. Like
Yeah,
we've all heard that, right?
yes, and I think what I shared with you is this: if the energy is there for, I would say, what is true to your nature, and maybe not so much there for things that bog you down. Everybody's going to be different in that, and I'm sure probably more in my chart that you see that probably shines some light on that. But I find there's certain areas that I do have tons of energy, tons of energy. It's almost like endless. And there's other areas where I'm just draining, or as I shared the word burnout, I think earlier, that maybe doesn't fit my true nature. And that's part of self-awareness. It's part of, I think, what even human design, what you shared, even when I took that class with you, it was like enlightening for me, because here's another element that I had not never even was aware of that actually can help an individual shine the light on certain areas within their own self, within their own life, within their own understanding. Because we're all trying to fit in the world. And sometimes when we try to, it's like that puzzle piece when we try to jam it in and we're like, oh, it's the same color, it's the same shape, it should fit here. And it doesn't. We try to do that to ourselves, and it really, over the long run, we find out it's not our true nature. And human
Oh,
design,
yeah.
in everything you've been sharing, I think really helps a person kind of awaken up a little bit more to know their true self.
And what got you started on this journey as a motivational speaker, Ron? Were you a child projector, a paradigm shifter for planet Earth? Were you envisioning or daydreaming one day that you wanted to be up on stage and inspiring people to live their best lives in the way that you do?
Wow, thanks for that question. I would say, like, early on, like in middle school, when they have that motivational speaker come on stage, and every school does this where they bring the kids into the auditorium. It's that feeling of like, well, I'd love to be able to do that, but I don't know how. And also the fear, because I still, even though I do this on a regular basis, I still admit there's still some energy, whether you want to call it fear or whatever, there's still something there before you go on stage. And it's not like you ever have to get rid of every fear, every worry, every doubt. You just need to start moving. And even myself, when I was young, I was a stutterer. I had a little bit of dyslexia. So the communication thing was not necessarily my gift. And I think sometimes when you have a challenge in your life, it's like that's there for you to supersede, to achieve, to go above. Because if you can break through that wall, whatever, then you can help others with that. So if you can master that in your own life, it's been a long journey, but it's something I like. And I feel the other reason why, Jen, is if you can help people, if you can serve the world in a way where you can actually help others shine their light in their own unique way, the best way to do that is as a communicator. As a
Mm.
speaker is one way, as a YouTuber, podcaster, writer, your gift is in writing, and I see how well you articulate messages and thoughts and feelings through words. It's like tapping into our own gifts. And even though we may struggle to awaken them, I think part of that is the push through that we need to do to get on the other side of that so we can make a difference and help others as well.
Mm, I love that. And the fact that you are a motivational speaker and you have experienced so much success with that life path, I want to illuminate for a moment. You have an open throat center.
Hmm.
And I think this is also another misconception in human design where people think that, oh, if you have a defined center, that means that, you have that thing. You have, this ability, this gift, this talent. But if you have an open throat center, you don't have that. And that
Hmm.
is one of the biggest misconceptions in the human design understanding, that people with an open throat center, like, they don't have a voice to share. And I mean, you have activated gates, and I'll screen share your chart here in a minute with your permission. But it's it's funny. I sent you a list of famous projectors like yourself last night in an
Mhm.
email, and one of those is Grimes, the performer. I believe she was with Elon Musk for a while. She has a tremendous voice that is incredibly moving,
Mhm.
that changes, and there's so much variation to it. She has no active gates in her throat center whatsoever.
Wow.
And to be a singer with a wide open throat center, now we're getting into the concept that you and I were speaking of at an earlier date about how you get up on stage and you can feel the energetic signature of the people in your audience that you are
Yeah.
there to relate with and connect with and energetically exchange with. And this is something that open centers actually provide us so much more opportunity to do that. Would you agree?
Yeah. And Jen, thanks for sharing that because when I first looked at my chart, I was like, oh my God, I I
You're
have an
not the
open.
only
It's like,
one.
yeah, it's like, oh, now the doubts come in. Like, what was this like some mistake? You're right. If you look at it that way, I don't necessarily always, it's not like I don't plan a speech. I do, but a lot of it does come through even in the moment, like when I'm in front of an audience. So the words that I share, the way I share it, the way I connect to the audience. And I'm finding as I've worked with other speakers too, there's some that need to have everything written down word for word, double spaced. That's their way of working through it. And that's also a little bit of the way academia has positions us through school and stuff to do it. But yeah, there's the spontaneity. And sometimes, with other speakers I'll talk to, they're like that too. They're like, well, I didn't really have my speech together, and it was not until my drive on the way to my venue when I had another story pop into my mind. I thought, ooh, I should probably share that from the stage. And
Mm.
so I know that that happens with me. I'm conscious of it. I'm I show up early sometimes because I have conversations with people, and it's amazing the conversations of others that are there in the room as the audience starts to fill in and take their seats. Those few conversations can sometimes be very good seeds to plant within the message.
Mm.
So
Yes.
yeah, your point about that not having a defined center, first of all, that relieves me because I don't think there's ever like you have to be this or have to be that, but it also makes sense of that connection to the audience.
Yes, it reminds me of an article that I actually just wrote last night. And you and I both have a defined ajna center, which
Mhm.
is synonymous with the third eye. And it's the
Mhm.
center for processing information as it comes in through the head, aka the crown chakra. And the ajna is an interesting one. And having a defined ajna means that we process information in a very specific way. We see the world in a very specific way. A lot of the times we really, especially your 6124 channel of awareness, the 2461 connecting the head and the ajna, like that is one that wants to know all of the mysteries of the entire universe and will not stop until it feels like satiated, which is never, you know? And it's like the ajna though is funny because I always want to know what the right answer is. I go on a feverish pursuit of research and exploration until I gather all of my little gold nuggets and cohesively put them together into a comprehensive picture so that I can have the truth, right?
Mhm.
And this is a practice of a defined ajna, whereas an open ajna, like they're able to see things in a myriad of different ways, and they're okay with there not
Mhm.
being a right answer, like a
Yeah.
single solution to a problem. They can see the full spectrum of the possibilities and potentials versus a closed ajna that can get kind of caught in the muck and the mud of the
Yeah.
search. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's not necessarily that these definitions are a good thing or a bad thing or the lack of definition. It simply means that we don't have consistent access to that energy, but we all have access to all of these energies, especially when we come together in energetic
Mhm.
exchange like you and I, and the multiple different electromagnetic channels that are formed simply by us conversing in conversation together and sharing inspiration back and forth. And this activates other energies that are not necessarily consistent in either of our charts, which provides the framework for the big, wide open experience of being human. So I want to, you have a lot of open centers. I'll be, I'll be
Yeah.
very clear about that, but that is actually quite, it's a superpower. And those who have been in human design for a little longer than just dipping their toe in it, they've taken that deep dive. They realize that the growth and the wisdom really comes from those open centers more than the definitions.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think also your point about what is the power of networking with other individuals is even though we may not realize that everybody else complements us,
Mm-hmm.
everybody else, maybe in one sense of whether awakens us as we awaken them. So we're complementing each other where there's an energy exchange. And so that's why I don't believe there's any chart that's a good or bad. There's no thing on the chart that could be good or bad. It's just unique to that individual. And I know when we originally talked about profiles, which is kind of the broader thing about people being put in these different profiles, the one insight that I found of being a projector was the wait for the invitation. I forget what it is. It's something like that, right?
Yes, that's
Wait for the,
exactly it.
and
That
then
is
I looked, I said,
that's your
yeah,
strategy as a
strategy. That's right.
projector.
Strategy. And then I stepped back and I said, you know what? I looked at how many times I've been invited in major things in my life. And I'm like, wow, that makes sense because sometimes I beat my head up against the wall and I work too hard and I try to do things like we had been talking about. We try to fit the mold of what
Hmm.
society or what the culture or what the way we've been told or trained to do things. And we realize, well, it's not working. And then we kind of like give up. And yet, innately, the thing that invites me or whatever it is always happening. I sit back and I say, well, if I realize I've been invited and I continue to be invited, and I may not necessarily know when that's happening, but it does happen. And the strategy I find even so it's kind of like we compare ourselves to the outer world. I like to like we talked about bikes earlier, right? So if everybody's riding a bike, but we're really in a canoe and we should be paddling, that's the awakening of understanding your strategy, understanding like this is the way things seem to work best for me. And
Mm.
even though the rest of the world may be whatever, riding a bike or a scooter or whatever, but I'm in a boat and I'm paddling. Now that I realize I've got a paddle in my hand, let me start paddling and life starts to work out better. And I think ultimately that's one of the biggest clarities that I got through human design, through you, through some of the things that you taught. Definitely.
That is a beautiful metaphor, Ron. I hope you don't mind if I use it because I mean, I've heard similar expressions of, judging a fish by how well it can climb a tree is not a measure of its true magic in this world, things of this nature. And I think it hits home in that. And I loved how you mentioned that in all of the work that you've done, you have been a practitioner and a motivational speaker and an author. You've done all of the things that your sole purpose in and has aligned you with, and that you have followed those callings. And
Yeah.
what human design does, and this is amazing, I think a lot of people need to understand this. Human design is not something that you leave these other things behind and jump into human design, and this is what you do now. Human design is a lens. It is a filter by which you can view the work that you do, view your human life through this lens for a new perspective of how that energy is actually working and operating. And once you realize what your not self themes are for projectors like yourself, it's bitterness. When you
Mhm.
start feeling bitter about whatever it is that you're involved in, that is a key, a red flag that you are not aligning with your unique design. For myself, as a pure generator, whenever I become frustrated, that is, it's like, okay, now I'm becoming frustrated. I'm in my not self theme. What do I need to shift here so that I can align with the flow of energy and the way that I'm meant to wield it in this world? Because whenever we can see the operations and all of the cogs in the clock, we can understand when there's a blockage. We can understand whenever there is a misstep, and we
Mhm.
can correct it so much easier than just by trial and error of that particular modality. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also very much agree with understanding when you're not in alignment
Mm,
and the energy of well, like you said, for mine is bitterness. So I would say, yeah, that the more that you can see or understand, or when that feeling comes up, then you can question, why am I feeling this way? Then, of course, everybody always wants to operate in the energy that is that their true theme energy, of success or whatever that is. You become more awakened, I think, when you become aware of the feeling when you're out of alignment. It's kind of
yes.
like Abraham Hicks. For anybody out there that's an Abraham Hicks fan, it's like knowing what you want by knowing what you don't want. We know what we want, but we get more guidance sometimes in the areas where we've discovered what we don't want. We get
Mm,
more clarity at those moments. And I would say almost to appreciate that. Because
yeah.
everybody says, well, why would I appreciate when I'm in my area of darkness, right? But the thing is you have to realize that that's kind of an indicator or a sign to your own self. So the bitterness or what you just shared about that, I like to be aware of that, because when you're aware of that, it's kind of your own guidance waking up in you and saying, well, wait a second. Now you can do a self-discovery and what would be the direction you want to go and what would be the strategy. So I think that in itself is a big tool for me, anyways.
Absolutely. We're all human beings having a unique human experience. And I think practitioners and, gurus and coaches and the like we get caught up in this another misconception that we're meant to be in the on switch all the time and delivering in our most aligned fashion. We are all going to fall out of alignment
Mhm.
with the way in which we are designed to operate with our craft and our talents. That is part of the package of coming to Earth as a human,
Mhm.
like in general. And I loved how you mentioned, and it reminded me of something that Ra said, Ra Uru Hu, the founder of human design, that we find more parts of ourselves and the path that we are meant to follow. I think based on what Abraham Hicks said, you'll have to give me that quote again, but
Oh, we know what we want by knowing what we don't
yes. Oh, that's so good, Ron. And I love Abraham Hicks. I loved Abraham Hicks for quite some time. But we know what we want by what we don't want. And it's
want.
something that Ra Uru Hu said, that and it speaks to the undefined centers and channels. Whenever we are in the presence of someone who is very different from us, oftentimes we experience an electromagnetic phenomenon in their presence that
Yeah.
then kind of when as we sync orbits with them, we feel like energized, or we feel excited, or we
Mhm.
feel inspired by things that they are sharing, not just with words, but with their energy.
Yeah.
And the what we are all seeking is the things that we are not.
Mm.
That is base. I mean, I'll have to find the exact quote, but we are all seeking all of these things which we are not consistently.
Yeah.
And it's not so much that we're not that, it's just that being in the presence of this energy activates it within us. It
Yes.
actually awakens it within us, and it speaks to the oneness and the interconnectedness of all consciousness in the universe as a whole. Woo woo people have said this for decades, that we're all connected, where it's all of our consciousness, where we all have a different experience, a different
Mhm.
perspective of infinite spirit, that wanted to experience itself. Human design simply offers the framework in how that actually works. And that's
Yeah.
what's so fascinating to me. It applies to everything from Reiki to somatic healing to coaching. I know
Yep.
that business executives, like they're actually getting into this modality of understanding how their teams operate, in a cohesive fashion to create the optimum outcomes for, profits and what it is that they are seeking to do as a team. And human design is applicable to all of these different scenarios and landscapes. And it describes it on a macroscopic as well as a microscopic level.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I'm glad you kind of mentioned the thing about the business mind sometimes is reluctant to go into a direction that may not be whatever proven through the method of science that they understand, even though it's scientific, but they may not be able to connect the dots, or it seems too woo-woo. I have traveled, of course, I've shared with you before. I traveled through Asia and I worked with some businesses over there, and I saw how they were more open to this and they had a very good success rate. The way I see it, Jen, is we tend to use these things such as the Myers-Briggs, the DISC. There's another one out there that's wonderful, the strengths test. There's a number. They're all good. However, it is typically through a set of questions and answers, and it depends on where that person is in that given moment
Mm-hmm.
within their mind state. It also depends a little bit on where they are evolved within this particular incarnation of their life. The older person may answer questions different than the younger person would, but it's also answered out of the egoic state of how should I be, or what do other people think of me. So we tend to answer questions that may not be true to our innate nature, whereas something like human design or astrology or any system that is planting in the coordinates of time and space, because we're all born out of the infinite one thing and we are unique. We don't know how we're unique. We're in that comparison to the rest of the world, but we don't know the self. Yet we have this roadmap that's
Mm.
that we designed, we created. Really, if you look at it on a collective level, we created the system that is called time and space. And of course, the the fact is, if the universe is divinely intelligent, then there has to be clues, there has to be code, there has to be, whether we understand or not, there has to be some sort of connection to that.
Mm.
And what is time and space? Well, time would be expressed in a signature, an energy signature, such as a birthday or a time of birth. Space would be the location,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how we're like on this beautiful earth that we're on. It's a location, it's a city, it's a place where we were born. That's unique to every individual. Now, to have somebody, the voice that came through Rahu, like to have that awaken within him and being able to connect this all together from these different spiritual modalities, right, has a provable system. And I'm sure you've seen so many people that you've coached and that you've worked with that really makes sense that when there's a clear understanding, the business world or the next generation of business world will adapt this and start to utilize this, because I believe the two things the business is doing, they're not only becoming more profitable or more productive or more successful or whatever sustainable for the business, but they're helping to honor the individual
Mm.
to
Yeah.
feel like they belong, to feel happy. And so yeah, I know I shared a lot in that, but to me, I see that that's how it's connected, because we have something. It's like we left the breadcrumbs behind for our own self awakening.
Mm.
We just need to realize that
Right,
they're there. So
exactly.
yeah,
And it's in the jargon and the definitions and the
yeah.
terminology that speaks to and what you were talking of also earlier about like the different generations and how they're going to perceive
Mhm.
information, how they're going to analyze that. That is the process of conditioning at play.
Yeah.
And that's something whenever someone gets their chart and starts diving into their centers and their gates and their channels and their profile lines and all of the thousand or more points of information that this chart has to offer on a single human being. And they start saying like, that doesn't really resonate. There's instances of like myself, I was very triggered by the notion that I was not designed to initiate because it's like, hello, I've initiated a lot. Thank you very much. Like,
Yeah.
I know maybe I am here to respond, but it, it, it kind of hit a trigger point for me that manifestors are here to initiate. That is what they are designed to do with the repelling aura. And as a generator, I'm here to respond to the world around me. Now, it doesn't mean that I can't initiate as a generator. We all have to initiate at different points in our lives, different things. But what I have learned is whenever I'm given the opportunity to respond to someone
Mhm.
else initiating a process or a vision, it goes so much more smoothly. And it's not like I don't have an integral hand in creating this energetic sequence. Like
Yeah.
as I was misinterpreting it before. There are a lot of issues, though, around conditioning in it. Ra Uru, who said himself that it takes 7 years after a person learns their unique energies and their authority and their strategies to begin operating in those ways. It takes 7 years to decondition from everything that we accumulated along the
Mhm.
way up to that point. And that really spoke to me. There are, the open centers are more susceptible to conditioning in the ways in which they operate because they are open with, what is known as that divine feminine energy, that receiving energy, and whatever is out in the world for them to receive, they
Mhm.
they will, from childhood onward. And that's another facet of the human experience. But learning how to recognize those
Yeah.
instances, that's the game changer right there.
I think so. And I think a couple of things, I guess I would wonder your perspective on it. So what Raul who said it takes 7 years to decondition. I'm wondering if from that time when he made that statement until now, if there's been a quickening, like people are
Mm,
starting to decondition. Maybe there's the Monarch Notes version of of the coursework now. Maybe it's condensed to a shorter program because people are waking up quite a bit.
yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so I relate to what you said there. But then as I ponder this, is I look at, okay, has there been times where I've gone to initiate and out of my initiation that maybe failed, maybe didn't, maybe I got one invitation.
Hmm.
And had I not done that, that there wouldn't have maybe that invitation came. Or the other flip side of that is if I sit there and say, well, I initiated that, if I sit there and think about it, well, wait a second, I initiated because there was an invitation that
Hmm.
came prior to. Like
Right.
maybe it was one person that said, "Hey, Ron, you would do really good at that," or Jen, you're great at podcasts, or like so maybe there's something that there was there, and I see that quite often.
Hmm.
The it's never absent of the energy of the invitation. I've been cognitive of that and conscious of seeing that. And also in speaking to projectors, like sometimes I don't know about other projectors that are listening to this, podcast, but I feel like sometimes they don't belong. So
Mm.
the self-discovery of understanding a projector or the person's unique profile helps them feel, I believe, a little bit more meaningful and purposeful. And I think everything that you shared with me on my own profile helped me to kind of feel, hey, you do have value. You're different, but you
Mhm.
do have value. For me, like as a teacher, as a speaker, I've always been, let me figure my own self out first. Let me be my own guinea pig, right? Let me, because that's really we all start with ourselves. But then when we learn and understand, whether it's human design or anything, the more we learn and understand through our own nature, the more that we can help serve others as well.
Mm.
The business thing, I really feel we're seeing a shift. We're starting to see more different type of CEOs and entrepreneurs that are coming on stage, different ideas that are being birthed, the whole new way of looking at every sector of whether it's healthcare or even food and nutrition, right? The more we have the knowledge of what is good for us, the more we
Hmm.
become self-empowered and not relying on a system that may or may not be serving us. So in the old paradigm, I would say that the systems serve themselves more than the individual. The systems are more for profit or for the benefit of the shareholder and not
Yes.
for that which they're serving. So you can see that within all of these. And I think finance, education, all these areas, they're all going through a revamping or a changing or a reawakening or um, some are going to have to crumble to be reformed, but the new entrepreneur and the new way shower, I believe they're going to very much be tapped into how do we evolve not only our business, but the individuals that are on this ship that we're sailing through this ocean together with, right? So how do we know that? I think it's already happening. I think
Hmm.
there's already those that are saying, hey, let me realize how I can use this as a tool to benefit, as a company. If not, I would say to a company that's out there, I would even say just try it. Just,
We're living in a
contact
brave new world, right? It's
contact Jen and just try it. Hell, because I think sometimes the best team building activity, because everybody needs corporate bonding and corporate team building, and they all need the fun. And the best thing is having somebody like you come together and put together people's charts and show them a little bit about something they never saw before. And
mm,
people being able to share and connect that. You talk about people having an open center and somebody having a defined center and how they're connected, and they may be best friends and they don't even know why, right?
exactly.
Their energies relate and they don't even know why, but yet their charts may show that. And I'm sure time and time again you've seen this, but this would be an interesting activity for a business, for some existing business to say, hey, let's have Jen come in and maybe show us, a little bit about the magic of understanding the nature of human design and how it relates to each of us individually on our team.
That's amazing. I love that vision, Ron. The and I can say so much about it. Human design relates to everything. And like whether you're talking about relationships, like a romantic relationship or the relationship with your children, learning about your children's human design so that you don't lay the conditioning on so thick for
Yes.
this type versus that type so that they don't have to like go through that later when they are, trying to discover who they are and what they're here for, things of this nature. But um one of the things, I mean, I have an anthropology degree in my background. I've always been fascinated by human beings. That has
Hmm.
been like my origin story from the very beginning. I have a deep love for the understanding of the inner workings of human beings and culture throughout history and into future trajectories, right?
Hmm.
And now we are entering in 2027 into a new global cycle. And while we don't know what exactly that will bring, one thing we do know, and this speaks to what you were saying about the nature of businesses and how they are evolving, we are moving from that mutative collective frequency of circuitry into an individualized circuitry. And as we can see,
Nice.
there are many different institutions and organizations that have been built up to huge heights, and they're kind of crumbling at the foundations. And
Hmm.
because it is making way, making space for an entirely new paradigm that is focused on that individualized circuitry. And if these businesses and these humans, at the individual level or the collective level, if we don't evolve, it's going to be a lot more painful because these
Yeah.
cycles are energies that are kind of an overlay, a blanket across the entire collective consciousness. We're all subjected to it.
Nice.
Like you said, our timelines are becoming they're becoming accelerated, and
Yes.
things are speeding up very quickly, as they often do at the time of great paradigm shift, which is what we have on the horizon to
Yeah.
expect. But I believe that there will be many more corroborations of the human design system in how it relates to science and quantum physics and mechanics and DNA even. And we're
Yeah.
already discovering and uncovering so many different epiphanies and revelations that can be measurable. We're just not quite there yet, but we will be. And
Yeah.
it's just a process of, it is a process of trusting that inner knowing, that sacral response, trusting your authority and your strategy, and moving forward the way Ra had to, with this vision and this voice that gifted him with this information. Imagine
Mm.
if he had just sat on that because he wasn't certain if it was right. And
Sure. Yeah.
it's become an exploration for so many people to become empowered in their own energy and to reclaim their sovereignty and to decondition from a lifetime of operating in a way that was not aligned for them.
Nice. Beautifully said.
It's fun to take a look at the differing energies and how they express themselves, because whenever someone receives a chart, their body graph, for the first time, as I think you can attest, everyone, including myself, is like, oh my goodness, what am I looking at here? Just like we had talked about before, you have so many open centers in the center of your body graph. You, however, have that defined root. I don't have a defined root. We were talking about whether projectors are meant, the energy type and how they tire out easily. You have that defined solar plexus and that defined root center, both motor centers. The root center is the center for getting things done, like the productivity of people with a defined root center. And not only that, they know when to quit, usually, for the day. Now, that's not to say that conditioning can't, take hold of an individual's life. And, the entire process of understanding our human design is to begin living in our body again and not in our minds. And our minds can be very convincing, features of our human experience, right? Like we can be conditioned to think that we are
Mhm.
supposed to do this rather than that. But human design teaches us, that strategy of actually tapping into our own energy that is actually housed in our bodies. And we can measure this now through the aura photographs. We
Mhm.
know now that this energy exists. We have electromagnetic fields. And it's just about understanding what those electromagnetic fields can do under different circumstances in the most aligned way that they are actually designed to operate.
Nice.
I'm so excited I got to meet with you today, Ron, and I can't wait for
Yeah.
everything that we have on the horizon, everything that we've talked about. Will you join me again on ZenJen Connections whenever we have something new to share?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I
And I
can't
really
wait.
appreciate you having me on. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, I know that there are going to be viewers that want to tune into everything that you are up to and everything that you are sharing. So I want to provide your website, ronaldfrost.com, so they can sink into your orbit and just like see everything that you're up to and grab those books, that new one that's about to hit the shelves this fall. I can't wait because I know that that's going to be an addition to my own library. You are such a gift to this world. Your energy is it's igniting. I enjoy the projector energy of the penetrating aura because I like seeing into myself, and I like how the projector aura can extract this wisdom from so many different places and shoot it up on the wall with perspective that it wouldn't be possible without your energy here. So I'm so grateful to everything that you're doing and everything that you're sharing with our collective. And I'm really, really excited to see what comes next.
Well, thank you so much, Jen. It's great to be here. And obviously, you enlighten the world with this understanding of human design, which is on the cusp of so many some people who have never heard of what it is, and others who have just barely touched the surface. Understanding what you have and the knowledge you have to bring and the way you deliver it is really a gem to the world. So thank you. Thank you for having me on. Looking forward to be on again in the future.
Thank you, Ron. There is so much to explore. Everyone who wants to connect with Ron Frost, motivational speaker, business and master life coach, leadership consultant, published author, the list keeps going. Everything that you are wielding with your unique energy in this world and the influence that it is bringing our collective. I mean, just take a look at all of his incredible work on ronaldfrost.com. You can grab that link in the comments in the description of this video. You have an amazing day.
You too, Jen. Thank you.